Welcome to Life Astrologer. I'm Anna Isabel, and today I have one of my very favorite astrologers with me, and it's Wanda Sellar. Hello, Wanda.
Hello there, Anna.
It's so exciting to be doing this with you. It's been ages since I interviewed you.
Yes, a few years ago, wasn't it? Yes, I remember.
Yes. So, well, this time I'm looking at your chart, and
Yes.
the first thing that I noticed is that you have a very nice Sun Jupiter trine, almost exact.
Yes, yes.
So, what's it like to have a lovely Jupiter trine like that to the sun?
Well, it's a dissociate Grand Trine with the moon, isn't it? Moon's in Virgo, so it's supposed to be sort of quite lucky, isn't it? Moon, Jupiter, Sun. It's supposed to sort of give you some sort of joy in life, and I think it's the basis of my a sense of humor. Basically, I tend to see a lot of things with irony. And irony is Saturn, I know, but I tend to see the funny side of most things, which is good and bad, because sometimes the humor's inappropriate, when I should be more serious. But I think it masks a very serious side to me, really.
I think so. I think there's no question that there's a serious side to you. You've got this moon in Virgo, which is, again, it's part of the, as you say, this dissociate Grand Trine. What do you think it means to have this Grand Trine that's primarily fire, but with the moon in Earth? What do you feel about that?
Well, we know that fire is full of ideas, and believe you me, I am full of ideas and never stopped, always wanting to do things. I think if it had been a purely fire Grand Trine, I might have just been on that level, just wanting to do things and perhaps never putting them into action, or putting, the practical side to them. And I think the Virgo, grounds the ideas and actually makes me put things into a practical mode. But I think moon in Virgo doesn't help the sun in Aries, because sun in Aries just wants to be out there and do things, and the Virgo keeps saying, do you really? It's sort of, it grounds, but it also doubts as well.
Yes, it puts a bit of a dampener on the optimism of the fire, doesn't it?
It does a little, yes, yeah.
And there is, so much that's optimistic here, because you also have the Sun and Mercury in the ninth, and then Jupiter in the fifth too. So, and I think I lose track of the number of people I meet with Sun in the ninth who have, perhaps it's a big picture understanding of the world and life, but it tends to encompass an interest in mythology, the humanities, history, and I can see all of that in your work.
Yes, I'm very curious about life. I'm very inquisitive. Even if somebody comes to do the plumbing, I'm usually on the floor with them, asking them, what's that? Yes, I just, it's good and bad. I'm very curious about everything, but it makes you a little bit of a dilettante at times, too interested in too much.
I wonder about that, because on the one hand, you do have Venus in Gemini, and there's obviously a love of learning and curiosity. But I think with the ninth house and Mercury there as well, there has to be depth and meaning, doesn't it? It's not just curiosity for the sake of it.
No, I always do something with it. That's true. Yes, I do. I love deep. I love anything in depth, in a sort of detective-like way. I have to dig deep, and I think that that's partly the moon as well in Virgo, because it analyzes, as you know, and it's to do with pathology, probably my interest in health and pathology generally, and want to know what's gone wrong, how to put it right.
Yes, I can see that. I was also thinking, of course, as you were talking about deep, I was thinking about your South Node being in Scorpio. And I think with the South Node in Scorpio, you can't help but be interested in deep because you come from deep, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, yes. It's supposed to be our past, isn't it? Whether we look upon it as past lives or just our past family genealogy. Obviously, something murky was in the past.
Something murky in the past. I like that. It's almost the beginning of a novel, isn't it?
So there was... Well, it's in the fourth house, isn't it? And my earliest memories really were because I'm Polish descent, and my parents came over after the war. I was born in this country, but I grew up hearing about all the atrocities that had happened during the war. A lot of people don't talk about it, but my parents did. But that gave me an interest in history and the war, and that's the murky side, you know, a lot of death, a lot of suffering. It was firsthand, and so I kind of grew up with I grew up too quickly, really, in a way. I was kind of into deep things quite quickly.
Yeah, you would have been under those circumstances, yes, because your IC is in Scorpio also. So it's, I think, and then there's Chiron sitting there in Scorpio too. So definitely, you know, a family, an ancestry that goes through hell, actually, is the...
Yes, that Chiron is square Mars, which is the ruler, traditional ruler of the IC as well, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I always, I mean, to make it more graphic, I mean, I'm half Armenian and half Polish, kind of like two defeated races. And I was conceived in Beirut and born in Polborough, Sussex rather. And so I think that's a bit murky, but it's quite exotic as well, I suppose.
It is, but it's funny because I was also looking at, just as we were speaking, I was thinking about that Pluto and Saturn in the 12th, again, pointing to, you know, certainly some difficulty along the generational lines going way back. And we know the history of Poland and Armenia, you know, for a long, long time,
Yes.
is of struggle and of course power struggles, you know, the people being caught up in the world's events and terrible situations. So that's the past. But happily, you know, from Scorpio, you're pointing towards Taurus, and I think of you living in Sussex with your...
No, I was born in Sussex. I live in Essex now.
You're living in Essex. Though I was thinking it was Essex, and I thought, no, I must be wrong. It has to be Sussex. So, but you're living there. You are. You're pretty much in the country, aren't you? And
oh, very much, yes.
Got your lovely animal family around you, and I don't think more Taurian than that, does it?
Yes, I sometimes think, should I have been an accountant, but with Taurus on the MC, with the North Node there, but as well. But I can't imagine myself as an accountant at all.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine a sun in the ninth house as an accountant? I just can't. No. Of course, the ninth house also speaks of your, you know, multinational
background. Yes.
Connections there. So that's quite interesting. I'm going to ask you a question I've never asked before, but I'm going to see what you have to say about it. Do you have a favorite bit of your chart? A bit that really, oh yeah,
Uh,
that's
I was wondering what you were going to ask. Do I have a
that.
favorite bit? That's an interesting question, isn't it? Do I have a favorite? I suppose I rather like my Jupiter in Sagittarius in the fifth house.
Yeah. Why is that? I can guess, but let's hear it from you.
Well, I think in my late teens, I could have taken. I had a choice to make. Really, it was either going into acting, drama, which is Jupiter in the fifth, or going into writing. And I went for an audition, but I think I was only 18, and I chose to do the Lady Macbeth speech, which was a little bit too advanced for an 18-year-old. So I failed miserably. And then I went for an interview on a newspaper and I got the job. So my life took the ninth house path instead of the fifth house path of drama. But the two are connected in a way, I suppose, by giving lectures and teaching astrology. So, there's, but I like the fun side of the fifth house, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think the wonderful thing about the path that life took you on, of course, is that it very much embodies the ninth house, as you discover astrology and then you're involved in teaching, Sun, Mercury in the ninth, such a wonderful teaching. And not just teaching anything, but teaching something that has meaning, and it encompasses so much of mythology and humanity within it. So it's perfect. And then the writing, Venus in the 10th as well in Gemini. I guess that's a lovely place for it. And it's just, I think that the temptation with Mars in Leo, right on your ascendant, to be out in the world, but you just found a different way of being out in the world and being very visible, as you say.
Yes, well, I think there's a dichotomy in my chart, really. As you pointed out, there's the Grand Trine with the fire and earth and sort of jolly planets and signs wanting to be happy and laugh. And then, of course, that strong 12th house with all the heavy planets, which makes me want to go deep and delve into things. And in fact, I don't know sometimes what I prefer out of the two, because I just love investigating the murky side of life, but I don't get depressed. It doesn't, or that 12th house doesn't draw me down into contemplating my navel. Although as astrologers we do, especially as I studied psychology as well, we do contemplate deeply, but I think that Grand Trine sort of saves me from, going too deep, maybe.
Well, I think the way I feel is that depth doesn't depress me, and looking at the darkness doesn't depress me. And it doesn't, because let's just say I have my head in the light. And I think that when you've got that sun in the ninth house and so much fire, you're never going to be away from the light. You're in the light at the dark, and you're not falling into the dark. You're understanding that darkness exists, and you're understanding that there is such a thing as evil in the world, but it doesn't have to depress you, because it's alongside that you're aware of the light, and the light being so beautiful and strong. And so you're not going to get drawn into the depressing side of things, hopefully. Well, I can't imagine you would with some fire.
Well, I've been a therapist most of my life. First, I worked on an agony column for the Daily Mirror years and years ago, and at the same time, I took up astrology, and then I went into the complementary therapies. So that was always as a therapist. So I was listening to a lot of darkness, of course, as a therapist, as a consulting astrology. We listened to a lot of darkness, but I think the Grand Trine helps me detach from it. I'm there with my clients, but otherwise, when I'm away from it, I don't really think about it. It doesn't bring me down at all. I mean, there's always the odd case, isn't there, that stays with you a bit. But I can't. Which sounds a bit callous, as if I can detach. But I think any sort of therapist needs that.
Exactly. No, I know exactly what you mean, because working as a therapist, you are exposed to the darkness on a daily basis, and you hear some very fairly hair-raising stories. But if you don't remain detached, you cannot possibly bring hope to your client. And your job is to restore some sense of hope as part of the healing process. So it would not do to be falling into the darkness with them. That's just not going to be helpful. So it's all callous. And you're right, how is it possible that I could sometimes hear the most heinous, horrible things and then walk away and forget about it for the rest of the day? Well, I can, because I know that person's going to be okay. And I know that this is part of the process, and I believe in light and I believe in hope, and it's my job to help them through it. There have been occasions where I've been haunted for a few days by what I've heard, because there are things that just really knock you. But you do have to remember that that's part of the other person's story, and that it's your job to detach, and not at all callous. It's vital, and it's what enables you to be caring. Otherwise, it would not be possible.
It is vital, and also being a firm believer in karma and reincarnation. Can't really believe in one without the other. I know, and it helps also when you're listening to unhappiness from people from your family, people very close to you. It's their karma. It's what they have to deal with. And I think a therapist who, whether helping family or clients, who enters or interferes, should I say, with another person's decisions, with their client decisions, is interfering with the karma. So that helps me to remain detached to a certain degree. But as you say, you can be haunted at times, and it is difficult at times, but we would be overwhelmed if we didn't have a system of belief as well.
And I think that's, again, that ninth house. The beauty of a sun in the ninth is to be able to hold that sense of meaning, because otherwise everything would feel random. And really, I think we're skirting around the word faith, but it is a kind of faith, a faith that there is meaning to this, a faith that there is a purpose to this, that it's not just random. And then once you are able to understand that, it makes it not easy, but easier to help people through their journey of understanding and self-awareness, so that they can get through that crisis point in their lives.
Oh, you're so right. If I didn't believe in a purpose and meaning, that I think life would be much more difficult as well, because I think I mean, I do study the works of Alice Bailey, and there's somewhere where she says that you are actually in the right place, no matter whether it's good or bad, happy or sad. The meaning is that you are where you should be, and you have to learn from it, get through it, try to understand it. So that's the meaning for me in difficult times, and said, well, look, you're supposed to be dealing with this, rather than say, oh, why did it happen to me? It's like, you're supposed to be dealing. But it's hard bringing that idea sometimes over to clients as well, and you never really want to sound as if you're preaching.
No, and you cannot say that. You have to allow them to come to that conclusion.
Absolutely. Yes.
Just finding the little signposts and helping them to spot the signposts so that they can come to their own understanding. And that is the best that we can do. And the most important thing we can do is help them to come to see that there is beauty even in the hardest of times. So that's not an easy job at times, but it is a vital one.
Well, I studied humanistic counseling, and I sort of bring that into my chart readings, that often you are seeing things in the chart, but you can't blurt it out to the client, good or bad. You lead them to come to that conclusion themselves, or not, as the case may be, especially when you're dealing with more traumatic events of childhood, because I do believe when we have transits or progressions to certain things in the chart, that we can then look back at that particular part, the planet, let's say, to the past, because I think that what we're dealing with are issues all the time that are clothed in an event. That's why it's hard sometimes to predict an event, but you can predict what the person is likely to be facing emotionally. So I try to bring them back to the past, which you can do by solar arc to the actual age. And rather than blurt out what I think, I lead them to that point where they come to that conclusion themselves.
Yes.
So yes. I sort of use the humanistic counseling in astrology. I know, I think a lot of people think astrology is telling people exactly, what's in the chart, but I think you have to work with the client.
Yes, there has to be a degree of collaboration, because otherwise it seems to me to be a pointless exercise. It has to be a collaboration, because the person needs to be able to derive meaning from the encounter, particularly if it's an astrology reading rather than a therapy situation, more than one session. If it's one session, then it's definitely vital that in that session they walk away with some understanding. It seems to be the point of the whole exercise.
Yes, when I worked for the Daily Mirror on the agony column, I was one of the backroom girls, under a big name, and we used to write to people, answering their problems. And when I went to work there, the lady in charge, I remember the thing that I remember mostly with what she said, always leave your client with hope. Even in the darkest moment, leave them with hope. That's what I try to do. Not always easy, but.
That's right. It's without hope, there is only despair. So you have to find the hope. You have to help people find the hope, which is, we're back to fire again. And that wonderful ninth house, just thinking about dark stuff and the interest in dark stuff makes me think of the event that's coming up at the Astrological Lodge of London.
Oh, if you don't mind me mentioning it.
Oh, no, it's so.
Well, this is my 12th house, obviously, with Saturn, Mars, Pluto there. I'm interested in pathology, what goes wrong, and why certain people commit crimes. And I thought it might be interesting if we put on a seminar to do with criminology and astrology. And we've called it Coffee and Crime. I know Israel was interviewed by you a while ago, and he mentioned it as well. I think he called it Crime and Coffee. Well, it doesn't matter which way round it is. It's because you supply the coffee and we supply the crime on Zoom, of course. And there's 4 of us giving different lectures, and it's on the 4th of September. And if anybody's interested, they can look on the Lodge website, Astrolodge Co. UK. And this week and next week, we've got a special offer. It's just £15, whoever wants to sign up. So well, that's the ad for. Thank you.
Oh, no, I'll make sure that I post the link to the website on the notes accompanying this this of Life Astrologer. So I think it's perfect. And you are, of course, you've got Uranus in the 11th house, and you are part of a wonderful astrological community. Yet again, such a resonance that Uranus in the 11th, that you would be involved in a fairly important part of the astrological life of this country. And you also put together the program for the Astrology Lodge. So it's that's a creative opportunity, isn't it, for your Jupiter in the 5th?
Well, you're quite right there. I think that Uranus opposes Jupiter in the 5th. So maybe that's why I didn't go into acting, into the drama world. Although I do amateur dramatics, incidentally, and write plays and direct on an amateur level. Well, not in the last year, not really done very much except write, my study, because all of us have been in lockdown. But yes, I see putting the program together almost like directing a play. And although I often asks the people to come up with their own ideas, I do have my own ideas and think of astrologers who I might like to do certain things as well. So it's a kind of drama. So I do really enjoy putting it together. I don't find it at all difficult. Mind you, I've been doing it for so long, I probably do it in my sleep. I mean, years ago, when I was actually president of the Astrological Lodge, I put the program together for 12 years. And now I could have got back to doing it, all by accident, although we probably think nothing is by accident. But somebody else was supposed to be doing it, and I started helping them because they weren't very well. And next thing I know, I've now been doing it for, what's 2015? How long is that? Is that 6 years or something like that?
Yes. Well, I always enjoy when when we know that we've got a date for me to give a talk. Sometimes I feel inspired. There's something that, there's burning, and usually that's when I approach you and I say, have you got a date for me? It's when I feel inspired to do something. But then there are other times when I don't have anything burning in my mind yet. But I always say to you, so have you got any a furry little friend there?
Yes.
And I always enjoy, the options. There's always this range of options, and I think, oh, good. I think, there's a bit good choice here. I get a little bit torn, and then I think, yep, that's the one. So I always enjoy that about working with you in that way, that you've always got some suggestions And I think, yes, oh good, let's go and
Yeah.
do that.
Yes, it is, I suppose, always better if you're fired up with something. You really, I mean, just this Saturday, I was part of the, as I mentioned, the healing and well, astrology and well-being for the Astrological Association. When I was asked to be part of that, I'd already started looking into something. And I was already fired up with it. It was about crystals. It was astrology and crystals and the high priest breastplate. And I was already fired up. So you're right. It's like if you've got already something there, it was just so appropriate for me to do it because I was enthused about it. But as you say, if you sort of have to dredge something up. On the other hand, I suppose if you love astrology, you'll always find something.
Always something. Yeah, there's always something, and which is why you love talking about it and writing about it, and I love doing, teaching it and working with it. So yes, this is about passion, and that leads us back to fire again. Passion. And with you there is plenty of fire, so there has to be plenty of passion.
Yes, I get passionate about everything that I'm interested in. But, the downside is it is Sun in Aries, it's Venus in Gemini. I can lose interest if I'm not challenged with it. I do love challenges, I must admit. So, I then go on to a new passion. But I always come back and finish things, which is an Aries not supposed to do, are they? the textbook Aries, they don't finish things. But I do eventually.
Well, you do have Mars in Leo. I should imagine that means that you get some satisfaction from finishing things rather than just initiating them. And in fact, you've got the whole package, cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So
Yes, they're quite balanced, I guess. Yes.
Well, Wanda, thank you very much for giving us a glimpse into your chart and into what makes you light up.
Thank you very much.
If you'd like to know more about Wanda's work, do you have a website?
No, I don't actually. No, they can get in touch with me through the lodge, through the Astrological Lodge.
And I'll make sure details of that are in our notes here. So thank you very much, Wanda.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you.
You've been watching Wanda Sellar on Life Astrologer. Next week, I will be speaking to Nicola Alsop. Until then, have a great week.